how much of a factor is the way we eat, the way we work out, the way we take care of our bodies, and the pace we go at? How much of a factor is that on the actual, some of the spiritual things that are happening to us? Burnout, anxiety, depression.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge connection to those. I mean, because I mean, even just getting outside as a leader, just getting outside to take a walk, to just clear your head, and because something happens to all of us, for example, like when we're outside doing something active, something happens, and I mean, if you talk to a doctor, they'll tell you about all the, everything that happens in your body when you exercise, and just all the benefits of that,
Right.
and just and how that helps you to sleep, and how that helps you to burn calories, and how that makes you want to eat the right food, and those kinds of things. But there is a direct connection between those things. I mean, when we come back from a vacation, I mean, we feel good. We feel rested, and if you do vacations correctly, even with young kids, you can feel those things. But I think for sure there's a connection because I think Martin Lloyd-Jones is right, that there's a connection to because I know for me, when I was overweight, I struggled a lot with just depression, anxiety, and it becomes this cycle then. It becomes a cycle that it's hard to break out of.
Right.
You're anxious, so you eat more. You're anxious, and so you have that dessert, and it makes you feel a little bit better at the end of the day. You're tired, and so you drink more caffeine, and you have more soda, and you put more sugar into your diet, and you just do those things, and it becomes this cycle that's incredibly difficult to break out of. Especially because one of the things that I talk with people a lot about, because they'll say, well, what was the key to losing your weight? And I said, it was when I began to understand the connection of the spiritual and the physical, and I began to look at really what I thought food was doing for me, and then look inside of my heart. Because you can, I have lots of friends. You've probably seen lots of people, they lose 100 pounds and they put 120 back on.
Yep.
And they're just in this cycle because they haven't dealt with the root issues in their heart that has led them to see food as an addiction, food as a safety net. And so that's the first thing I always tell people. You have to figure out what is making you turn to food. What's the heart issues that you're running from? Yeah.
That's huge, man. The idea is just, I know it might seem a little nebulous to some people, but if we, especially in ministry, pastors are already in that world. We need to begin to explore this a little bit more. And we all got these blind spots that we've got to be more careful with. And I think this is, in America, this has got to be one of the biggest vices. And, gluttony obviously being a sin, and it being almost an acceptable ministry sin in some circles. So real bizarre in a lot of ways.
It's funny. I mean, like I said, I get all kinds of emails from pastors. I'm doing a coaching cohort right now for church planters of churches under 200. And I asked them, they all filled out a form to say, what do you want to learn? What can I teach you in the next year? What would be the most benefit to you? Every single one of them said ways to get healthy.
So we're all dying. Okay. We're all dying from this. We all looking around, but at the end of the day, when we go to dinner with, maybe the Acts 29 folks are in town, and we, instead of having a salad, which we could easily do, or maybe have a nice lean cut of meat or whatever it is, we've got to go for the nachos. We've got to go for the beer. We've got to go for the soda. We've got to do those things because, it's, we're being hospitable. And so now we're manipulating some of these things so we can eat what we want. But if we get to the root of it, perhaps there's actually an eating addiction or a behavioral addiction that's taking place. Yeah.
Well, and just practically, so some of the things that I always tell people, I never go out to eat without knowing what I'm going to eat before I get there.
That's good.
So every time I go to a restaurant, because the things that are good for me, they never have a picture of those in the menu. Right. And so, never go to a meeting without knowing what you're going to have to eat. If you're traveling, like I travel to speak a lot of times, I always have snacks with me. I always have good snacks with me, because when you get to a conference, they don't have good snacks for you. Like they have tasty snacks, they're just not good for you.
Right.
Thinking through some of those things. And it was interesting too. Tom Rath in his book, Eat, Move, Sleep, talked
Mm-hmm.
about when you order at a restaurant, you want to order first because the first person at the table sets the tone for the entire table. So if the first person orders an appetizer, everyone else goes, "Oh, we're waiting to order our meal. Okay, well I'll order an appetizer too." And or when they come around and say, "Hey, does anyone want dessert?"
Yeah.
The first person, yeah, I'll have dessert because this is the conversation. Well, who else wants dessert? We all look around, and it was funny because I think it was a sportscaster who said I was listening to a sports radio and he goes, "Have you ever had dessert at a restaurant and felt good about yourself when you were done?" He was like, "No, you don't. Like no one ever feels good about themselves after that. Like chocolate wall of cake or whatever you get."
Oh
And
gosh.
so so just thinking through some of those things that you can and it was interesting too when I was losing weight that salads aren't always the best thing on a restaurant menu for
Right.
you.
Right.
There's salads at Chili's that have 1,600 calories in them.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by that. I thought, oh, salads are the best thing for you. And they're not always. And so just learning some of those things that, just asking people, doing some research. I mean, the trouble is there's just a bazillion things on the internet about food and what to eat.
Mm-hmm.
But when you just start to break down some of those things, you think, you know what, I can always go out to eat and know what I'm going to get before I get there. I won't even open the menu. I know exactly what I'm going to eat, so I'm not tempted to get something else. That's just a simple thing to do. That's something you can do
So
everywhere you go.
good. Such good advice, and so down to earth for people to grasp. I would say, especially for leaders. Leaders are typically readers. They love to read. They love to understand. You wouldn't be in a race car in NASCAR and not understand the car and what's needed for the car. You wouldn't be
Yeah.
run a marathon without understanding what type of fuel you'll need to be successful at that. So do your research and learn the basics of nutrition. Don't rely on, Jillian Michaels. No offense to her, but don't rely on, The Biggest Loser for your
Yeah.
eating advice because it's sensationalized. And I would even say don't rely on, Chili's, menu to give you the best advice. Do your research and understand
Yeah.
what your body needs to
Yeah.
perform well. Because if you want to be successful, you've got to do that. So